Anybody looking for brilliant short, well, let's call them tight, not the short ones, kind of halfway up your thighs. You can get probably 10 gels or more into the pockets at the back. They do not bounce around, so no need for a flip belt to carry your gels in.
A side note, my mum follows me on Strava. She uses it to find out what I'm doing and to keep up with where I am in the world. But she's never liked a single activity of mine. Like
no
even 100 mile, no kudos, zero kudos from mum. Welcome to another episode of Two Average Runners with Alice and Hugh. How do I say it? How's it, Alice?
Yeah, how's it? Hello, how's it?
Hello, how's it?
Very good, thank you. How are you?
Very good, good. We're back recording episode 3. We're on a roll. It's happening. And I really liked what you did last week about sort of like a quick little sort of barometer of where things are. So what are your scores for this past week, Alice? I think it's a rating for running and a rating for life.
Okay, life rating. I think I had a little bit of a tepid week last week, didn't I? I think it is, and I was hoping it was going to be a little bit more on the up. I'd say it's pretty average, medium rare. Let's call it a 6. We're quite quiet at work. We've got kids writing exams, so that's still sort of a bit ongoing. But yeah, I've had some nice time with some family and friends, so that's been good.
Okay.
Run rating was going to be a 10 because things are going well, but I definitely started to get a little bit of pain and a bit of increased awareness back in the leg with the worst stress fracture because I had one in each leg. So I don't know if it's a bit of the paranoia setting in with 4 weeks to London, but I've been like, oh no, I've refractured and I've been getting a bit stressed. But today I didn't have any pain when I was running. So I'm going to tailor that one down to an 8 or a 9, my run.
Awesome. What made, even despite that sort of tempering it down, what was giving it such a high score to start with for you this week with running?
The runs just went well. I really enjoyed them. I did a brilliant route on Saturday. I did about 33 kilometers. We're going to have to figure out how to convert to miles because I know some listeners are miles. But I think you know London quite well. I've started off near Regents, all the way along the canals to East London to Victoria Park, where I'm running a little race this weekend, round Victoria Park, down to the Thames, down to Limehouse. And then sort of, I guess it's almost the last stage of the London Marathon, all the way back along the Thames to Embankment, Buckingham Palace, and then I went up through Hyde Park, back to St. John's Wood. So it was like a really awesome loop. Loved it. Great pace. Heart rate was so low for my pace. I was very excited, and my marathon pace session on Sunday went well. And track went well. So I'd had this like really brilliant week. Sunday, I started getting pain in my leg. I was like, oh no, I pushed it too hard. But yeah, I'm still feeling confident. So that's good. What about you?
Exciting.
How is your run-mometer? We must come up with a name for it.
Yeah. So on the run rating, I think last week was it has to be a 9.
Cool.
Last week we talked about the big races or the big things we're working towards. And so I'm working towards, back in Wales doing 100 mile that I've done before, the Beacons Way in July that I actually still haven't technically registered, but there's still plenty of places. I need to lock that in. But it's what I'm sort of building, 20 weeks towards. So I think this was like week 3 and it's sort of roughly following a sort of 3 build weeks and then more of a sort of like pullback week kind of a mode. So last week was a big week, and it's a real focus on sort of more aerobic training. I got about, I think maybe like 12,000 feet of vertical. So that's probably for our UK listeners, probably 3,500 meters, something like that. Pretty shy of 4, I think. But which here in San Antonio, where it's not mountainous, was kind of super solid work. And I got a cracking 20-mile trail run done on Saturday, where again, heart rate was controlled, was feeling pretty strong on the uphills and the downhills. But yeah, I actually felt like the last 5 miles felt pretty good. We're not like totally destroyed and wrecked. Like there was no real intensity in there. I'm not doing obviously not any marathon paced efforts or marathon efforts. But that was solid. And, a couple of strength training sessions. It was just an all around, put together like a really solid week. And that felt pretty good.
And are you still doing biking here?
I didn't do much biking at all last week because I was doing, I did 3 strength sessions, the 2 main strength sessions with the trainer, and then I did another mobility strength session at home. But it was like 4.5 hours on Saturday, which was a lot. And then Sunday. Wow. But I think the cool thing it did is that I'm not doing any track work right now. I'm not doing any sort of real sort of intervals, but I did get 3 sets of strides in. Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. So just keeping a little bit on that one. And I think we want to, we might talk a little bit about that in a few minutes.
Yeah, that would be great.
But anyway, it was a solid week. So I was kind of pleased with that one coincided. And then life is good. I think the score, we're going to do the score of today on we're recording on a Wednesday morning this week. And, I think I'm a 7, and only because the last 2 nights I've been up working till like 2 a.m.
Really? Wow.
Which generally I like to go to bed at 8 p.m., after I put the little guy down, and or read or just go to bed. But surprise, surprise, Alice, I'm a procrastinator. And I almost think that in the world, I am an executive coach, as are you. And what I love about our kind of work, we don't actually work together, but we do very similar things with high growth companies, senior executives. Most of the time I'm doing Zoom calls and coaching sessions. Yeah. But every now and again where I do a project, I'm doing one right now with a couple of other coaches for a large tech company and their executive team. So we interviewed all the executive team all about each other, following some particular questions and frameworks, and collected a ton of data and transcripts. And it came to the point of having to pull it all together. And so I was working with my friend Claude, who can be a good partner at times, but also
sometimes annoying.
Sometimes annoying. And it was one of those ones where I must have spent the first time 6-7 hours in straight, it was just so much tweaking and back and forth and then having to double check. And it was actually good. I was pleased with it, but it was one of those ones where I just had to do that block of time. And there's no way I'm ever going to get 7 hours of time during the day anyway. So just one of those evenings, and put Henry down and then just went and just kept going. And then the second night. So I'm in pretty good shape right now. I mean, this is all of my own design. I could have started earlier, but I actually don't think it's not like I could have broken it up over the last week in 2-hour stints. I had to do a big sit down session. And anyway, so that's sort of sway me.
You're not feeling too bad, not having had enough sleep?
Better than I would have thought. But there's two things of, we're 2 average runners, but, we're both in some ways crazy professionals. We spent parts of our life working hard. I'm also a pretty spiritual soul, which may surprise or not surprise people, depending how well they know me. I think sometimes the universe aligns things. I think this is the best week in my down week. So both the last 2 mornings, I've got up and just done the slowest of shuffles, or I did, a walk with a weight vest as I did daycare drop off kind of thing. And if it had been last week, it would have been tougher last week.
Yeah.
The two
no,
things.
It's
so
good I didn't
plan it. I didn't plan it, but it kind of worked out serendipitously. And then one thing I thought I was thinking about you. I read an article by Steve Magnus. Sorry, not Steve Magnus. His writing partner, Brad Stulberg. Or was it Steve? I can't remember. It was one of those two guys, and it was about this idea of optimizing. We live in this culture of optimizing. The perfect temperature iced bath and the perfect stack of supplements and all this kind of crap. And sometimes it's just you just got to do what you got to do, right? And do the best you can and not being over optimized is quite fragile. And we can maybe talk about this another time, but there was one thing, it gave an example about showing up when you don't think it's your day. And it gave an example the Beatles. There was this time when they went into the studio and they were all tired and John was late and they were all snippety at each other, and then they didn't want to be there in a way. And then they just started strumming or whatever. And then John came in and they recorded Get Back, one of their classics, all-time classics. And the day should not have predicted that that. And so it's one of those, it's the last 2 days I felt 4 hours sleep, felt pretty crappy. And it's I'm just going to not let that discount everything that's going to happen. So anyway, that's how I'm walking into this week. Anything else from you as you're approaching this week? Do you have a race coming up, Alice? Do you have a little
I have a small race on Friday, but I'm going to just treat it more like training run. And then obviously London is 3.5 weeks away. So that's kind of looming and on the mind. No, this week, what did I see out in a bit of social media? I've seen a bit about stress fractures. It's been such a big thing at the moment. I don't know who you're following, but somehow in the sort of London running scene, a few months ago, there's sort of a young woman, her name is Mary McCarthy. She had a stress fracture, but she's got quite a lot of followers, like more than 250,000 or something like that. And the internet kind of went a little bit crazy with her having the stress fracture, and everybody's trying to blame is it the algorithms from the different apps, like Runner app, for example, that's pushing, are they pushing people too hard? All these kind of debates coming up.
Okay.
So there's been so much about stress fractures. And as we know, I had mine in November, December last year, and it's been kind of returning to run. This morning I saw Conor Mance's out of Boston, which is in 2 weeks. And from what I think I understand is that he had a stress fracture, I think, and he was returning to run. So maybe he's also been struggling. There's a couple of other British runners who are also out of London. So it just seems like the stress fracture epidemic or whatever is such a big hot topic anyway. Not helped by the fact that I'm then got all this pain in my leg the last couple of days. I'm thinking, oh my God, I've refractured. It's snapped. It's over my race. I'm going to be out of London, but no, hopefully not. Wrap myself in cotton wool.
How does that make you feel
there.
when you start to see all that there? Because I'm sure then the algorithm is then going to serve up more of that story. So it might be poignant, but then it looks skewed. Like a freaking pandemic at that point because and I think
maybe all of us are all seeing it in our little sort of whirlwind of little vortex of the same stuff. Although when you go and chat to the physios, they do say they're seeing more, but more people are running. You know, even my own coach said to me this week, years ago, if you were a woman running a sub-3, that was like, wow, this was absolutely unbelievable, incredible, especially say if you were living in South Africa. Now, quite a lot of people are doing that. It's not seen as, so there are more people running. We're running further distances. We're running faster, or maybe more expectations on people. People are traveling all over the world to do all these majors. So maybe there's no surprise that we are seeing, physios are seeing lots of stress fractures. So yeah, it is a little bit, it does leave one worrying a lot that it's going to sort of happen again.
Yeah.
But, I'm just trying to do all the right things.
Awesome. Well, I think this segues pretty nicely. We had our first comment on Spotify from a real listener who actually listened to the first episode of our podcast.
We may have had
an actual listener. We have at least one listener who isn't like a member of our immediate family. Although I don't even know if our immediate family are even listening to this podcast. I haven't
told anybody yet.
I tell my mum, but who knows if she's actually listened to it. And if she did, she probably wouldn't tell me. A side note, my mum follows me on Strava. I think she only follows me and my sister. So she uses it to find out what I'm doing and to keep up with where I am in the world and what I'm doing.
See where you are.
Where I am. But she's never liked a single activity of mine. Like
no
even 100 miles. No kudos. Zero kudos from mum.
Does she know that you can give kudos?
I don't even know if she knows if she can give kudos, but it's like I'm getting a zero kudos from mum. And it's funny because I sometimes forget that she is a follower and she even logs in and looks at it because, sometimes I don't even think it. And she'll be like, oh, I saw you were in like blah, 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 blah. And it's like, what?
That's
I guess you follow me on Strava.
I'm assuming she's not posting her own activities.
She is not posting any activities of her own, though she does go walking and things like that. But okay, let's get to this listener question. So this is from Courtney from San Antonio. Thank you, Courtney. And she says, great first episode. The Nomeo discussion got me thinking. I'd love to hear about more, quote, running experiments you try on yourself. What are the supplements or training theory trends have you tried? Or will you try for the sake of this podcast? I think that's a challenge. And give your experience. Bicarb, Current Z, hill strides versus flat strides, raising, lowering, easy run effort, more or less workouts per week, etc. Like product reviews, but less formal and not just products. What do you think about that, Alice?
Absolutely love it. Brilliant. As you were reading that question, a whole long list of things are coming to mind. So we must make a note and think about, and maybe keep true to that. Every episode, talk about something that we're trying out.
I like it. And I think I actually followed up with Courtney, and one of the things she sort of said was, there's a lot of sort of podcasts from professionals out there, a lot of very formal running coaches or what they're sort of being overly scientific or extremely. And what Courtney was asking, it was I want to hear the perspective from the average runner. And you know what we are, Alice? We are two average runners.
We certainly
are. And so it's not about, we're sort of little guinea pigs. This isn't a peer-reviewed study. We don't have a roster of professional athletes that we have tested all these things on, or we're seeing them. We're just doing our best to sort of help ourselves on our running journey and our life journey. And so we will start sharing some of those, which I think is a good segue. Let's do something fun right now. You just said you were going to run this this race this weekend. It's in Victoria Park?
Victoria Park, East London. I think it's something like 7 laps of the park, something painful.
And it's a half or 10K, did you say?
A half. It's a half.
Okay. And you had a question. You sort of had a question, a very practical question, which we thought could be a mini sort of, running experiment related. What was that related to, Alice?
You're talking about the Nomio?
Well, actually, that is true. I was talking about the Nomio. I think you said you're going to try it out this weekend. Is that right?
Yeah. So I have tried out Nomio a couple of times now. Maybe. How many times have I downed that shot? Have you tried it yet? I know we discussed it once.
I'm not. Yeah, we discussed it once.
So basically, it's comes in a little glass bottle. You keep it in your fridge. It absolutely stinks when you open it because it's something like 2 kilograms of broccoli sprouts and lemon juice and sugar. That's all that it is.
Okay.
So 3 hours before your event is when you're supposed to take it. You down it. I have it with my pre-race breakfast. I think you know that I've really struggled with nausea.
Yes.
And actually had some races that I've had to pull out or had to stop because I'm throwing up. So for me, it felt like quite a high risk thing, trying this disgusting tasting and smelling shot. So far, hasn't given me any nausea. Mm-hmm. And I've used it on my marathon pace sessions. So my marathon pace sessions have gone really well.
Ooh.
Now, the first time that I'm going to be using it in a race is this Friday. So I'm practicing my race breakfast. I'm doing everything sort of for London Marathon. I'm preparing to do exactly the same things, same kit, same breakfast, try and get the timings right, etc. And Nomio is going to be, Nomio, however you say it, is going to be part of that. So I think what's going to be great is, because I'm also doing the in-race fueling the same as I'm going to do for the marathon, even though you don't really need to for the half marathon, I'm still going to push the same number of carbs. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping it's going to give me quite a good idea about sort of the levels of fatigue and how I feel at marathon pace. And I think the only trouble is that I'm not going to have anything to compare it to apart from some of the other runs. So far, so good. I'm feeling great on those runs, especially towards the end. I'm not having that level of fatigue. I'm not having my heart rate go up. So for me, I mean, even if it's, placebo, I'm actually really loving it, and I'm not going to stop using it for the foreseeable future, but I'm reserving it for my sort of longer marathon pace session runs at the moment. So I'm going to see how it goes this week, and next week report back and let everybody know how it goes. And then, of course, the ultimate test, London, in a few weeks' time. So hopefully have a bit of a race report on how that all went.
Okay, so Courtney, we'll give you the Nomio rundown next week, and then post London Marathon from Alice. You had a question, and then a sort of a tactical gear-related question. I think you were asking about socks or something.
Yeah,
What's the sock question?
So basically, because I'm 3 and a bit weeks out from London, I'm getting all the kit ready. So I'm doing all that shopping online. I don't know if you're the same or if it's just sort of us lady runners, but what you're wearing, the kit you've got to get. So I'm always spending a fortune getting everything delivered, trying it on, sending it back. I'm quite a fan of the brand. Do you know the brand SOAR? SOAR?
No, I don't know. Okay, cool.
So anybody looking for brilliant shorts, well, let's call them they're tights, but the sort of thigh length ones, not the short ones, kind of halfway up your thighs. SOAR marathon shorts are the business, because you can get probably 10 gels or more into the pockets at the back. They do not bounce around. So no need for a flip belt to carry your gels
cool.
in. So I use them for Berlin and I use them for my marathon pace session. So I'm always shopping on Saw. The only problem is it's not. So every item seems to be 100 and
Running's
something
so
pounds.
cheap. All you need is to run out the door. You just need a pair of DAPs and you're fine. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So I'm trying to get the outfit laid out. So I'm kind of nearly there with the top half. I definitely know what shorts I'm wearing. I've decided Puma Fast R3s. I'm sticking with those. Brand new pair just arrived earlier. I haven't unboxed them, but they're downstairs waiting for me. Super excited for that. Socks. So I have tried all sorts of different socks. There's a brand that I loved called Sprox, which are they're actually Spanish, and I like them because it's important to me what the sock looks like. It needs to go with the outfit. It needs to come up the right length up the leg. It needs to be a little bit exciting. I don't want to just wear a plain pair of white socks. Socks need to have say something about me. Sprox were brilliant for that.
Okay.
And I discovered them my first marathon. I went to Valencia. But you know what these expos are like? When I went to Berlin Expo, I saw this brand called, I think it's CEP. I don't know if you say CEP or CEP, but there's compression.
Yeah. I think I've seen that. Yes.
So now I've absolutely loved those socks, and I bought some very, very thin ones. So I went from these sort of more medium weight socks to these ultra thin, quite tight, nice luminous yellow socks, which I've been using with my Puma Fast R3s. For the life of me, I cannot find them online. So now I'm looking at all the different alternatives. So I've got so many new pairs of socks, and so far nothing has lived up. So I wanted to ask you for your road racing, because I know trail is going to be different. Do you like a thin sock, a thick sock, cushioned, less cushioned? What works?
Wow, what a question. I don't think I've ever thought about it this much.
No.
But,
socks have got to be the most important part, apart from the look. It's like your feet. What's happening with your feet?
I think I really struggled there. I think I'm dropping the ball on the socks and the look. I definitely went through that very Euro phase, even when I lived in the US, of wearing sort of calf compression, which is classic like Euro mountain runner.
Yeah.
That was definitely a phase. I'm not in that. I left that phase many, many years ago. You know what's crazy about socks, Alice? I was thinking about this the other day. I have the same set of I probably got a half a dozen socks that have been in rotation. I swear, since I must have bought them in 2016.
Not just the elastic.
No, so these are Drymax socks is the brand.
Drymax, okay.
Drymax, and these are for their trail. And I think Drymax is famous for almost having sort of two layers inside them. They're not a toe sock. That was too much freaking work to try to put toe socks on.
Can you imagine?
But I just never have blisters in them. And I've run 100 miles and I've run 50 miles and 50K and so ironically, they're just the sock that and I was starting to think they're starting to wear a bit. There's I probably should get some more. And I was a bit scared about just trying to find the same exact sock by that brand. So I don't have the greatest answer of a recommendation, but I do like that because I've just never had blisters. And so now I just wear them. I wear that when I run marathons or run road races.
Maybe what you need to do is buy another big batch. So this particular type doesn't run out of stock.
Yep, I do need to do that. And I think as well, that what the funny thing is that if I then put on a really thin sock, more of a sort of traditional thin run-in sock, my shoes will feel a bit too big.
Oh, really?
So it's almost
I hate that feeling of them feeling too tight. That's my stress out.
Right, exactly. But it's
I prefer my foot to feel loose.
So I think I've just whenever I've tried, got the size in and then, whatever it is, when I go for a new pair of shoes, I always try them with that same pair of socks now.
Okay.
So it's always they're all dialed for that one. So I think if I go to a thinner pair of socks, I think my shoes are probably going to be a touch too big, a little bit. So I am someone who optimizes, hence the comment about at the beginning of the podcast today about that article, have definitely over optimized a lot. I think socks is one of the few places where
No, I agree. Because let's be honest, if your feet are not comfortable, it's going to be a disaster. I mean, even on a marathon training session, if I haven't quite laced my shoe right, I cannot continue. I must. I'll get out. I'll only start when my feet are comfortable. You know what it's like if you think one bit of your sock is slightly out of kilter and it feels a bit different in one part of your foot. I just couldn't run it. Everything must feel nice and equal. I need to feel that my feet are not being squeezed. So hopefully I'm going to have time to find the right spot between now and London. Quick one. What about,
Yes.
Are you somebody who loses your toenails when you run? Let's see if we've got any good tips for readers about on that front. I mean, readers, listeners.
Readers and listeners. I do after really big races. I think I have them all right now. My toes are ugly. I do not have, but I don't tend to like lose a ton of toenails. Maybe after a massive race. How about you?
No, definitely lose quite a few. But a friend of mine told me, I don't know if it's called Vaseline there, to that petroleum jelly. If you actually might, whatever you use for chafing, if you need to, put it all over your toes. Apparently can make a huge difference. So there we go. So I've been doing that and it has helped. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's like, it's a trade-off. When I get really beat up if I'm running mountain races and running downhill, and I'm a bigger guy, and so typically it happens when your toes like hit the front of the shoe, but it's a trade-off on downhill. Like you don't want to be wearing clown shoes with so much space because like it's sort of, I like things that are actually a little bit more, not overly tight, but more snug because I want to feel a bit more precise when I'm running downhill. So these are some of the experiments
one more quick question I wanted to ask you actually while you're talking, because I'm not a trail runner and my sort of paranoia of something being in my shoe or something feeling out of kilter. Do you have struggles with things like there's a stone in my shoe, there's sand in my shoe? Is it the kind of thing that happens and you have to stop and correct it during a trail run?
Pretty rare. For me, but I think I may be more at the beginning. I overthought some of that stuff. Pretty rare. I used to be one of those people who try to wear like these little gaiter things, like these.
Yes, that's what I was wondering.
And I just haven't bothered with that for years and years. It's just one more faff thing. But if there is like a genuine one, then just deal with it and move on. But I'm generally I don't struggle as much with that.
Okay. And so tell me, what are you experimenting with at the moment?
What am I experimenting with at the moment? I think so like one little thing here. So I've totally been in the sort of trail super shoes realm for quite some time. I found those Adidas shoes worked pretty well for me. I could run well in them. Some people hate them. And for any flatter, sort of smoother trails or runnable trails, they're awesome. But recently I was running some more rockier trails and I used to just bomb downhills and just bomb trails so much. And I felt like I wasn't as confident. And so I kind of went backwards and just bought like a pair of like standard Hoka trail shoes, non-carbon, non-super duper foam. They happen to be bright pink, which I love.
Good.
So that's winning. I don't usually pick shoes for color, but that is, and they probably are heavier, obviously way heavier than a super shoe. I'm just having a lot more fun on the trails and just like, I'm able to like not switch off, but like, go for 4.5 hours, not overly think, not run, not roll any ankles, just like have a blast flying down some rocky trails. And it's an interesting one. It's like, I know they're probably not performance. And if I had taped my ankles and I was wearing the super shoes and I was fully switched on, and I'd probably be more efficient. And there's a time and place, but it's kind of funny. Sometimes it's like, I just want to like really just have fun on this trail run. And I'm not feeling like literally or figuratively weighed down by a shoe that is no doubt a little heavier than the average trail super shoe. So I'm kind of like, that's probably one. It's like a reverse experiment in a way. I'm not experimenting with the super version. I'm experimenting with going like the budget version, the old school version. And then I'm playing around a bit, like this sort of maybe ask in one of Courtney's questions, the listener question there, which was, right now I'm sort of building towards mountain races. I'm going back to some bigger sort of volume, but it involves vert, and I'm focusing on strength work. I think we talked a bit about that. I'm sort of 4 weeks into like twice a week protocol with a trainer, like doing strength more consistently than I ever have. So we'll really see how this what this looks like by the end of 2026. But I was really kind of I pulled out all intensity. And so I was a little nervous because I'd done a lot of more road, like half marathon training and marathon training through this, but like because I live in Texas and the weather from September through January, that was a nice block. And so I was a bit worried about losing some of my speed. And I can't do everything in all the intensity. So I have really been focused on strides. And I think the listener was asking about like flat strides versus hill strides. And so I'm doing a little bit of a bit of both. I love hill strides.
Okay.
They're on. I think it's good for the power, and I feel pretty. It sort of makes me really excited to like push really hard for only 20 seconds or 30
I was about
seconds.
to ask, how long do you go? 20, 30
20
seconds.
seconds.
Max.
And remember, it's not an all-out sprint for 20 seconds. You're sort of like the 20 seconds you're accelerating and then trying to sort of, hit sort of a peak, but without like all out sprinting. And then before you know it, it's like, it's over. And then it's sort of like, and so I have.
And do you jog back down, or do you do this like kind of going up a hill?
It's actually interesting you say that. So on my normal sort of run on a Tuesday, I don't have many hills around here, but there is one that I can do 20 or 30 seconds. So I will do it and then I'll jog back down. And what I've been trying to do more than anything is actually have a full 90 second to 2 minute recovery. So that I can really, because it doesn't feel that hard. Well, it does feel hard in the moment, but it can recover quickly. So I can easily go 30 seconds later or a minute later, but I want to try to make a bit more recovery and so I just hit the stride hard. Then I have a really fun group that we go for a shuffle run on Thursday. And one of the guys there, said he was going to do some strides at the end. I was like, perfect. And we just did some flat strides. And again, when I'm not running I'm not doing road marathon pace or half marathon pace really efforts. I'm certainly not doing sort of like 5K, 3K efforts. Just being able to just go do a 30-second flat stride makes you feel like, oh, I can run fast.
Yeah, it's fun.
And it's not actually that painful or hard at all because you're running and you're up speed and then it's over. It's over so quickly.
And how many strides do you do? How many, flat or hill, how many repeats of the strides do you find
so
works?
if I was doing it as part, again, it's an easy run. I always do them right at the end because it does, my heart rate can be super low all through an easy run. I'll do some strides. It's going to be a little bit more elevated and it's not really, but I'll usually do 5 by 20 second strides or 4 by 30 seconds. So that's what I'll usually do, something like that if I'm doing it during the week. And then lately on the weekend, on the Sunday, I've been doing some hills on a Sunday, road hills, not trail hills. And I've got a great hill that's like a half-mile long. And so I can run up and then run down and get some and so at the end of my session, I then do some hill strides. And what I've actually been doing is like I've been doing 30 seconds and then sort of jogging or just resting like almost on the spot. And basically just keeping that going until I hit the top of the hill.
Okay, brilliant.
And that was basically 4 or 5 by 30-second strides. And that's probably a bit steeper than my like weekday hill anyway. And that feels good. But then I do something that I don't suggest you do at home, kids. And this may come back and absolutely like bite me in the ass. Is I like downhill running. So what I do, and I've done the last couple of weeks is, and this hill is probably 7 or 8% grade. So not like this, we're not talking like a mountain, but this isn't just like a little like grade. I like to do, once I hit the top of the hill, I'll do 2 30-second downhill strides going back. Oh my gosh.
Down. Bombing it right down, but actual sprint strides.
Yeah. So I mean, and I don't want to be in the sprinting motion, but like for me, and again, I'm a 3.5 hour marathoner, an hour 35 half marathon guy, sort of a 44-minute 10K guy. Like I'm not slouch, but I'm not like super fast. But on my downhill strides, I'll hit 5 minute a mile pace for that stride. So. But downhill is my sort of strength. And I think there's something, because obviously I'm trying to season my legs and get them leg strong for these big mountain adventures. I think these could destroy a normal person. I'm not saying I'm special. I just think I'm more equipped. Like, don't try this at home. Don't try this, Alice. Don't if you have a stress fracture,
not just before London am I going to start sprinting down some
certainly not
hills,
just before a big race. And certainly, but for me, like the psychological, doing so much sort of slow training, which is good, like aerobic trails, long vert, it's so fun to like feel like you're going fast. So like those 2 30-second strides downhill, like felt like I was absolutely flying, and was just a really nice way. Those are our like non-truly scientific, non-coach approved. Don't try this at home. How we try to bring some strides.
But I think strides make a big difference. I mean, I definitely use them in my getting back to fitness.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a difference, as you say, between a hill sprint and a hill stride, right?
Yes.
So it's like a bit of a different session, just for anyone who's listening. It is not the same thing. It's like you throw it in at the end of your run.
Yep.
And as you say, just short burst,
Yeah.
but not all out, just to kind
Mhm.
of get that leg turnover. And from what I understand, and I don't know what your understanding is, but the uphill bit, it was actually quite good for form, power, and also
Yes.
almost preventing injury as well. I think there's something about that in the muscles you're recruiting. So
I
quite
think
safe, I think.
I think it's way safer than flat strides. Flat strides, you do have the risk of pulling a hamstring, right? Or
Yeah,
something, particularly if you're not warmed up or you go a bit too hard, or you sort of like, it's that like, the track, twinge of like, overcooking a sprint or something. Downhill, you have real risk of like, really beating yourself up. And, if you have any risks of any stress fractures or any kind of shin splints or anything where the forces are going to be like way bigger than a flat stride and a hill stride. But it is a pretty nice, fun thing to get the feel in. And again, these are 4 or 5 of them.
Yeah, it's quick.
20, 30 seconds. I think it actually changes if you're doing like 10 by 30 seconds. Now you're probably in a workout.
That's different. That's
now you're in a workout at some point. So, yeah.
And also there's a runner I follow she's British, Carla Molinaro. You may know her because she's also an ultra runner and she lives in Cape Town.
She does.
And how she talks about strides that I found helpful, and I'd sort of deploy this tactic a little bit, is to build into the speed.
Yes,
so
exactly.
You just talk. So rather than to just like, if you were on the track, it's like, okay, you watch your countdown, off you go, 800 meters or whatever you're doing. You kind of, from the get-go, you're hitting pace, whereas the stride, you could kind of allow yourself to build into it and then slow down and stop. So I think it is safer. So if you're doing it on the flat, definitely build in. I build it up the speed, I'd say.
Yeah, I think the Roaches say, the David and Megan Roach say a very similar thing. It's not about the average speed of the stride.
Yeah.
It's almost, for them, it's about the top speed or like top power, which you might only get for a couple of seconds.
Yeah.
Because it's a sort of neuromuscular recruiting, and you should see running economy, you should see muscle recruitment, like all these kind of things that should, for a very small dose, have a big impact.
Yeah.
I, by the way, love Carla Molinaro.
She's cool.
That one of my sessions a week, I signed up for her little app thing where you get a yoga session and a mobility session.
Yes.
And the reason I'm sticking with it is she might be the funniest person.
She's very funny.
She has no inner monologue, and she just like tells you about what she's cooking and what she's eating and like what she's doing with her friends, and it is one of the most entertaining parts of my week.
And because where she lives in Cape Town's kind of also quite the cycling mecca. I think one of her hobbies is overtaking cyclists on the hills. I'm just saying morning as she sort of comes past them up the hills, and
I love that.
sort of has quite a bit of banter around that, which is pretty funny. So yeah, give her a follow. It's definitely good value for money.
Definitely.
She posts most days.
So Alice, this might be a good segue. You mentioned the Conor Mantz, the stress fractures stuff that have been in the news a bunch lately. We sort of talked a bit about this. You've been on this big journey of sort of coming back, and I think you thought it might be useful in the spirit of this podcast, where like this isn't scientific a protocol or like direct recommendations, but like sharing your experience. Like you had a stress fracture, you had to come back for it, and this whole coming back to run is like can be such a mind fuck for us as runners. Talk us a bit about your experience and like what you went through and how you went through it and how you navigate it, because I think the average runner out there could maybe benefit from hearing how someone like you navigated something like this so well.
So I followed all the advice. I had the usual treatment, which is getting a weight off your leg, the moon boot that you have to walk around in, start doing some cross training. I was quite lucky that I could get onto my Zwift. I've got one of those indoor Zwift bikes, to try and keep the fitness going. And then after a period of time could start some run walks. But then the actual return to running itself, the advice that I got, which I found mentally, to be honest, really tough to begin with, because what I was told is just focus on building mileage. Forget about any of the intensity. So at the time that I'd had the injury, I had come off the back of Berlin. I think I'd already had the stress fracture when I ran Berlin, but things were just getting worse and worse. I was approaching Valencia. I was actually pretty fit. I know you can't go on what your watch said, but my VO2 max was pretty high. I was running quite decent weekly mileage. So I felt that I was almost at the fittest I've ever been at that stage. So then when you start running again, I know it's silly, but your VO2 max plummets 5 points. Your resting heart rate isn't what it was. you feel frustrated because you've been doing all this biking and strength work. And you realize that your fitness, you don't lose all your fitness, but you definitely lose your pace and your fitness does drop, and it takes time to build back. So I had signed up for this ultra marathon that was supposed to be actually in sort of 10 days time. But every run I went on felt like it was like a test. Am I getting fitter? Am I going to be able to run this thing? So what was great was actually just pulling out of that ultra so that there wasn't pressure on me every time to run to see it. Every run had been feeling like a test. So we took that away. So I did follow what the physio said, which was really tough, because when you're on Strava, and I've got other friends who've had all stress fractured around the same time as me. We all had to pull out of Valencia. Some of them are 20 years younger than me, admittedly, but you're watching them and they're back and they're on the track. And there you are, another easy 45 minutes jogging, another easy 45 minutes. And they are, doing all these sessions and running at threshold. So the physio said to me, and the physio that I've been seeing is quite a good runner, and he runs a high weekly mileage. And he said, just try to stop watching what everyone else is doing and just build mileage. And so we just literally built it up incrementally. And I think my highest week has been 125 kilometers, which isn't huge, but it's pretty decent considering I actually really only started proper running towards the end of January.
Yeah.
And now what are we in? Sort of 1st of April today.
Yeah.
So I followed that advice, and I can say that the first few weeks were really frustrating. In fact, my heart rate was often quite high in those easy runs, but then suddenly things started clicking into place. So the first thing that we did was introduce strides, exactly what you've been talking about. And very interestingly, with the stress fracture, what happens is that you do get symptoms, and apparently it's all about the bone is remodeling. So the idea is that you're putting your bone under load, you're increasing the load each week, and then that pressure is actually helping the bone remodel. You go too far, you're going to risk refracture, and apparently risk of refracture is really high. I don't know. I've read 50%, I've read 70% in the first year you can refracture. But you want to load the bone up. So your job is to load it up a little bit each week, a little bit more, and help it heal. But when it's going through that remodeling, you do feel it. So just talking to you about strides, I remember the first few times I did strides, sure enough, that evening and the next day, I could feel in the bone, I have put more load through it. So the point being that anything with speed, anything with that sort of intensity is actually putting a lot more force through the body. So just getting used to doing the strides. And you know what? It was so fun, as you say, just to run that a little bit faster. And I just did my strides in my road. My dog stands in the front garden and gets very hysterical because I'm sprinting away and coming back. He doesn't know where I'm off to, but I put him in the front yard and he watches me do my strides and gets very excited. And it's just fun to run a little bit faster, even if it's for 20 seconds. It just gives you that feeling. And then we started to introduce one slightly faster session a week. So I was already up at probably 100 kilometers a week before I put in anything other than some strides. So I had to be really patient, but it really has worked. Yes, I've had some symptoms this last week, but it has been my highest week. And everything sort of seems to be settling down. So I think I've only done 2 track sessions in this whole build because we've held off. And I can tell you, the first time that I went back to track, I immediately noticed extra pressure in this fibular bone in that leg. So, following the physio, which I don't always like to do, but I mean, so petrified of refracturing and then being out for 6 months has definitely made a huge difference. And, there's all this talk about easy running and does it or doesn't it help. Actually, I think just doing loads of easy running has made a big difference.
Absolutely.
And you could just actually enjoy it because there's no pressure on you to have to perform. Just go slowly. Try not to even look at your pace. Just keep your heart rate down. My physio even encouraged me as I started to do longer runs on the weekends. Take your time. Stop to have your gel.
Yes.
Take some
like
water.
That.
And I've also been running with my partner, Dale, who is a bit slower than me, as we discussed last time. And it's been really good to just run it often at his paces. And just enjoy it and go on a sociable run and get a coffee together. So definitely not watching everybody else, just building easy miles And the other thing that I found very useful is keeping up my bike sessions.
Cool.
And lots of actually elites that I'm following, or sub-elites, the guys that are maybe like a 2:13 marathon.
Yes.
A lot of them have been dropping a little bit of their running mileage and putting in more bikes and finding it really helpful. And actually, I think that's made a big difference. So I am going to, for my next marathon, keep the biking in.
I love that.
I think it makes a difference. It can almost act as those double days, those days that I've only done one double run in this whole build, but I've done lots of bike sessions in the evening as my second session. So
I do like that. I do like the bike. This last week, I didn't do much bike because I was doing it was like a bigger volume week. And again, I'm not compromising on strength, but the bike can be so much fun. And I think
the British winter has been awful. And also this British winter has been so dark and so awful. I was actually feeling quite spiritual in my own way, and actually have felt quite grateful that in some ways the timing of this meant that I didn't have to go in that awful dark and cold out to run. And I could sit in the comfort of my home on my Zwift and watch YouTube and just train out of that sort of weather. So yeah, for anybody who is coming back from a stress fracture, just be patient. Just think about slowly building your mileage. And then it's very interesting because after my physio said 5 or 6 weeks, things just start clicking. And actually, although I'm not where I would be at my top end of my paces with my threshold it's a much slower pace for me at my threshold. I've actually done quite well to make inroads in with my marathon pace. So I'm not my fastest, but I've built that durability, the fatigue resistance. I've got the mileage in. My legs are sort of hardened from that point of view. So I'm excited to see what I do at London, and I'm not under huge pressure because I'm coming back from injury to do an amazing time. To run a solid race would just be great. So yeah, it's exciting, and I'm glad that I stuck to that kind of approach rather than just continually testing how fast can I go.
So injuries and sort of even take injuries or taking a little time off for injury or illness or a little mini setback. And it reminds me of that. It's quite cliched. I think Tony Robbins is the one that sort of has made it famous. Is like in that realm, it's like we overestimate what we can do in a year and underestimate what we can do in a decade, or this idea. I think we both, when you get injured or when you take some time off, you doomsday, or I certainly doomsday, and it's like, I've lost all my fitness. It's all gone.
Yeah.
Right. And then, which is firstly, is sort of isn't true at a total baseline. It didn't all go away. But then coming back always sucks and feels so much slower. Like, I want to be back. I want to be testing one thing. And so it sort of feels like so slow coming back and re-emphasis, I've lost it all. But then within a month or two, without realizing, like you said, where you are now, it's like, a second, it's not like you started running for the first time like you first did at the end of January, and where are you 2 months into a journey? You still had the whole of last year and the year before and these years of stuff. And so it takes a little time for it to come back online. But it's this dichotomy. We feel like it's so slow, and then I think it catches us and like, wait a second, I didn't lose it all. And maybe sometimes like that period of biking or a phase where you've been building more power on the bike or building some more resiliency could actually be setting you up well for the future. I think this segues nicely into the last thing with what we talk about today, is this idea of seasons, right? You've come through a little mini season, the stress fracture and return to run season. And I really like that you haven't put pressure on yourselves for London. And then it's like a next phase, to build towards a fall, like an autumn marathon. Mm-hmm. It sort of got me thinking as well about sort of seasons of where I've been I did a trial of miles. Like, I had a very disappointing race at Leadville last summer where I DNF'd of my own. There's no excuses. I didn't want to keep going and doing it. I wasn't having the day I wanted and didn't want to hike it in for 30 miles. And I was disappointed. And then I had this big season where it was a very road focused, like miles focused, just getting out, doing a lot of miles. And it was a really fun sort of season of training. Now we're going to a different season as well. I think we're working towards our move back to the UK. It's taking longer just to get things organized, but it's happening. And it's sort of, this podcast is a bit of a new season for you and we've been friends quite many years now, living so far apart. This podcast is a real excuse for us to connect around our running and our life experiences. We didn't talk about this at the time, but we ended up releasing our podcast on the anniversary of my dad's passing. So my dad passed 1 year, a little over a year ago now, after a multi-year battle with dementia. And, we get time to reflect when we do all this running. And sometimes we avoid it by putting podcast in and zone out. But it is an opportunity to reflect. I've been reflecting on it a lot lately on these runs about this phase and this new phase. That is one sort of chapter that has really sort of ended, but a new chapter is beginning with coming to move back to the UK. And I really like that this podcast is sort of aligning with that sort of chapter. And it's a chapter where I'm focusing more on running the mountains. I'm almost looking at that one as sort of like, back to Wales, to where, to mum and dad, to mum still being there. But like, that's where I feel like dad's soul is in, in those mountains in Wales. To have a new focus on that period that, again, like, it doesn't have as much intensity right now and is a bit more about going out for long adventures and taking the time to sort of reflect. So I just wanted to share a bit about that. I don't know what experiences you have. I'm happy to share a bit more about, how I'm feeling about things.
No, I was just wondering what it's like for you knowing that you're moving back, but with your dad no longer there. What do you think it might be like coming back home, but with things also being quite different? And obviously, how old is Henry now? 2?
3. Over 3.
Okay.
So it's kind of interesting. So it really is a phase where he's, they're exploring at so many ages, but exploring life. And so I'm excited to see him sort of explore Wales and see him seeing Wales through his eyes. It's interesting about moving back. There's definitely some moments over the past several years of which is another impetus to move back now, to be close to family and mum, particularly in the mum's on her own now. And knowing that we don't have indefinite time with all the people that we love. It's interesting. I'm excited because ironically, I think my mum can do more now than she's been doing in recent years. Like the last 3 years, my mum has been like just such a hero looking after my father. And that was sort of a big, they had a wonderful partnership and obviously and some cherished moments doing it, but then a lot of tough times with with his illness. And even then, sort of going back home and visiting was tough in a sense. And I get I live in a little bubble here that doesn't face it day to day. So it was often bittersweet going back. And so there's part of me that's looking forward to go back now, and less sadness that he's not there, but more excitement about taking more opportunities with my mum and sister and nephews and Henry and Zoe.
And Henry getting that time to, I guess, with his Welsh family. Is he going to learn some Welsh?
Yeah, he will learn some Welsh when we get back there. Though it could be an interesting. We've taught him a few words here. It's just very hard when you live so far away. But my sister's given us a couple of books that are Welsh, and there's one of them that's Welsh, and it's in English and Welsh. And so Zoe reads it in English, and then when I try to read it in Welsh, she's like, "No, I don't want it in Welsh." And it's like, "Oh, you're gonna have a rude awakening, son, when you move back to Wales." But I think you'll find it fun because his cousins will speak Welsh, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that sort of changes all the dynamic there. There are also, he's a little Texas boy. He wears cowboy boots to school. But there's times he complains when it's like slightly cold outside for Texas. I'm like, this is going to be really interesting to see how he deals with the cold weather. But the British say, and there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothing choices,
exactly,
or bad preparation. There's so much adventuring you can do in the rain and the weather.
Great. Wales is beautiful.
We love exploring castles, and so that's going to be one of our favorite things. When we go back, we always visit a couple of castles and run around and imagine. So those are kind of the
tell
things.
Me, one thing I'm curious to know is, did your dad love the mountains? Did he get out, and what was his thing that he loved to do?
Yes, and so my dad grew up in Wales, what's known as the valleys, which is like the series of these valleys in South Wales where all the coal mines were.
Yeah.
And so my dad, and so they're quite steep, right? These valleys are, and often there were all these they're like all the coal pits, like all the stuff that they'd mined, the bit that wasn't useful, all these tips, coal tips, I think they call them. And so my dad played rugby because Wales is all about rugby. My dad's a very good rugby player, played for Newport, but he would just go running up and down these mountains for training. And it's really interesting when I think about my dad in that he was when he played rugby, it was still an amateur era. Like everyone who played rugby had a day job, but they played rugby on the weekend, even if they played for Wales or South Africa, right?
My dad was a good player, so I recognize that.
And so, but my dad didn't drink, not because he was an alcoholic. I've talked about my struggles with alcohol, and I've been, sober now over a decade, and no regrets. But he was sort of ahead of his time. He sort of didn't drink for performance, but it's kind of crazy to be doing that in the 70s when Wales were winning.
He was optimizing.
He was optimizing, but he was making decisions that made sense to him. In a time where, people played rugby on the weekend and at an international level, and then, got hammered with the opposing team on the Saturday night and got into trouble. And so my dad always, and him and my mum had moved out to the Brecon Beacons to be in the mountains. That's what they enjoyed. They liked to walk and be outdoors and see the outdoors and have that fresh air. And so that was always a piece. And growing up, we'd go on hikes and walks. And in years gone past now, when I'd go home to visit, we'd always go on a walk. Over time it got, we couldn't go as high or as hard. But even then, when my dad's dementia was, there were times when he couldn't remember a lot, and we'd go on a walk and it would trigger memories. He'd be like, I used to run up there and I used to run up that hill. And so that's another piece. Whenever I go back, I have a lot of wonderful memories of my dad and why they picked that part of the world to live and some of the things that they could do there with these sort of outdoors. And my dad did stupid shit as well, which is my grandmother lived in a place called Porthcawl. I've named a lot of my companies, my holding company and things like that after that seaside town. And my dad, for training off season, would run up and down sand dunes. You ever run up and down a sand dune?
Yes.
You know what a sand dune?
Work. Very tough.
It's just
we have
so
them in South
slow.
Africa and it's hard.
It's so hard. You're slipping, no footing, you're gassed in no time. And my dad, would always tell me about when he would do that, and sort of inspires me about how he was experimenting like we were about his different ways of sort of training and to stay fit so he could play the sport that he loved to play.
Sand dune hill strides, we don't recommend.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, that would be
This is where you get your bombing down hills.
Oh my God. Yes. You could run down the sound. Yeah. I mean, you're probably going to hurt yourself. So that's actually
it's fun to run down a sand dune, but this is where you obviously get it from. Now we know.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited
looking
to
forward
learn a bit.
to seeing you back in Wales and hopefully get to meet your family and see where you've come from. So I'm looking forward to that later.
We'll do some adventures in Wales.
Yeah.
In the Brecon Beacons and Black Mountains.
Be brilliant.
And it is one, when I go back home and have some of those, that run where it's just like a magical run, it does bring back for me a lot of those memories of childhood and why and home of being Welsh. And as well, what's interesting, we all the achiever in us likes to run up and down a mountain, right? Mm-hmm. And I often joked about this one that running up and down a mountain often sucks, right? Because when you're going up, all you're doing is seeing a wall in front of you and you're in the zone. And obviously, you and I, we love getting in the groove and the grind. And then going down, I love it, but it's often very technical. You're sort of technical. You're in the focused zone as well. The Black Mountains where I grew up there, they have these big ridge lines. And so most of where I runs there is you got to hike to get up, and then you might run for a couple of miles along sort of the top. It's not you're going to fall off each side. And so you have views either side, but you're up, but you're no longer climbing. So you're now running your sort of run pace on a trail that is there might be a reasonable trail. It's not super rocky. And you just sort of but you're up in the elements, and then you mountains to the left and the right. And so that's definitely my happy place.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing it.
All right. So
sharing that too.
Thank you so much, Alice. Thank you for sort of asking and about that. And so what else? Anything else we got to cover today? Do we have we obviously shared our sort of listener sort of big, sort of observation, comment and question. Anything else that's coming up for you or that we need to cover?
No, I think I've got all the inspiration that I need ready for Fridays. We'll test a race and
Love
ready
it.
to report back next week.
Fantastic. I can't wait to hear how the Nomeo went down, what socks you wore, what the outfit looked like. And and then we can continue. If any listeners still here now, keep sending us the questions.
Send
you know
us
how
those
to get
questions. Yeah, that'd be
how to
brilliant.
reach out to us. And we'll keep answering them on the podcast and talking about, various topics in running and life from just two quite average but quite aspiring runners.
Good to see you, Hugh.
Good to see you, Alice.
See you next week.
Thanks, everyone.